Joining us now, our old friend Corey Lewandowski, television commentator, campaign manager for Donald Trump, of course, and he joins us now. Corey, you've been very popular on TV. I've seen you everywhere, my friend. How are you?
Well, I'm in the swamp today, so I'm not that good, to be honest with you, but I'm happy to be on your show.
Oh, well, Corey, I saw you up in New Hampshire, and I was thinking, okay, Corey's happy when it's a summer weekend and he's up in New Hampshire, when you have all the good weather, and you got the hiking, you got the fishing, you got the boating. There's no better place to be than New Hampshire or Vermont, up in New England in the summer. I love it.
No, you're exactly right. Look, if I had my choice, I'd be there every day. But I want to come down to the swamp and help the president drain it, so that's what I'm doing today. Okay, so for our listeners who don't know what it is you're now doing, tell us what you're doing officially, unofficially, running a outside group, as an informal advisor, just so people get what's going on. Yeah, look, I've had the privilege of continuing my relationship with the president. I serve as an informal advisor. If I'm fortunate enough to be asked my opinion from individuals who work in the White House, whether it's the president or other staff, I'm always happy to weigh in, because I think what the president knows and what probably the American people know is that I don't have an agenda. I have the president's agenda, and that means tax reform, repeal and replace of Obamacare, immigration reform, building a wall on the southern border, and all of the things that he ran and we campaigned on. I want to see him be successful in implementing that. And the luxury of being on the outside is I can say and do things that you can't do when you're inside the government. And the great part is nobody can fire me because I don't have a boss.
Well, and that is liberating. And sometimes isn't it nice to walk out of there and you're like, oh, good, I can leave when I want to. I mean, it is a little.
No, you're exactly
feels
right.
good. You can breathe.
It is such a humbling thing, as you know, Laura. You've been there many times, to walk into that building and have the weight of the decisions that have been made in the Oval Office and other places next to you there, and it's so humbling, and I am so grateful for the opportunity when I do have the chance to go there, but I also enjoy my time when I get to leave there just as much.
Corey, let's talk about General Kelly. What, you know him, I know him just very, very much on the surface. I've never really spent any time with him, but by all accounts, he was a loyal implementer and enforcer of the Trump agenda over at the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know how it would get anyone really, frankly, much better at DHS. And now he's in the West Wing, someone with very little political experience, or none, now managing that sometimes unmanageable place.
Well, it's very interesting. Look, I think the choice for Donald Trump, President Trump, was a clear reflection of his desire to move in a different direction and to put a reset together. But what I think, if General Kelly, Secretary Kelly, is going to be successful, which he's going to learn very quickly, and it's a phrase that I have coined, and I think people understand, is you have to let Trump be Trump. And you're not going to change the president, because for the last 40 years, he's been an unbelievably successful business executive, television executive, author, real estate executive, and he doesn't want to change. And that's not what the American people voted for. They didn't vote to have Donald Trump change. They voted for him to be himself. And what I think General Kelly is going to bring is the discipline to the staff. He's the chief of staff. He's not the chief of the president. And if he is able to do his job, which I think he will, which will be limiting the backbiting and the infighting amongst the individuals who are serving inside the administration, that is a very, very important thing, and put everybody on one agenda, which is the Trump agenda.
Now, to be brutally candid, as we need to be as people who do support this populist nationalist agenda, we're below 40% here, Corey. And, I certainly want nothing more than this president to be successful. But obviously something's not working. Something didn't pay off here in the last 6 months. There's a lot of going on Capitol Hill, but just putting your more reflective hat on, what did go wrong over the last 6 months? What could they have done better to sharpen the message to the American people so they understood what they were going to get with a Donald Trump healthcare approach, what they were going to get with the Donald Trump approach on, even maybe the travel ban and stuff like that? What could they have done differently?
Well, there's a couple of big components of this. Number one, he has not had a significant legislative accomplishment yet, which I think is a shame considering the Republicans control both the House and the Senate and the White House, and they haven't moved that big legislative agenda that they should have done. Now, part of that is the reason that the House and the Senate were not ready when the president took over with their repeal bill, so we had to start from scratch. But look, there's also a fault of the administration for not filling all of the vacancies and getting rid of all of the holdovers of the previous administration. And what we have seen is the deep state is very real. And there are many, many, many individuals who continue to serve in senior positions inside the government that were there from the previous administration, and their job is to make sure that this agenda does not move forward. That's very clear. And that is a part of the reason why his approval numbers are not where they should be. You couple that with the fact that we have not started building the wall. We do not have tax reform done. We don't have repeal and replace done. We don't have a massive infrastructure spending bill done. And people are starting to question, can anybody truly change a broken Washington, D.C.?
Well, the man who campaigned as the greatest deal maker ever, new approach. I mean, it's sometimes, at some point the rubber meets the road, and it's great to flip, you switch out personnel and people, but you're right. If you don't have the big legislative achievements chalked up in pretty short order, we're rolling into the 2018 election cycle. And, saying it's Paul Ryan's fault, Mitch McConnell's fault, everybody. Well, they do tend to say, okay, how are we really selling health care? I mean, you know this because you've done this, and I feel like I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but our listeners know that, like, from the very beginning of this healthcare fiasco, I've been saying, well, if this really is what they want to do first, which I think was probably not the smartest thing to do, but then they needed to turn this into a campaign and make it emotional, filled with incredibly poignant anecdotes and powerful anecdotes and real people, just like they did the victims of illegal immigrant crime. They need to do the victims of government-run healthcare and Obamacare, and go all over the country and say, we're going to do these four steps to healthcare freedom. And they're going to argue this, and this. This is why the other side's going to be wrong. And I think they could have actually done this, but they never did it. And I don't think the president invested all that much time in understanding these issues. I think his staff around him, for whatever reason, thought that we could just give it to Mitch and Paul and it was all going to work out. But I think that, in retrospect, hindsight's 20/20. But I think that was a big mistake.
Look, I think the mistake should have been leading with taxes. When you look at the polling data, and this president doesn't go by polling data, but he goes by his instincts. The American people want tax relief. And repatriating the trillions of dollars which are sitting overseas, giving middle-class tax relief, and making sure that corporations at every level, all the way down to sub-S level, can reduce their corporate tax burden from 35% to 18% or 15%, is all ways to grow the economy. And we can't continue to grow at 1%. We need to grow at 3 or 4. And if that would have been done first, those three simple things, repatriate the money from overseas, give middle class, double their deductions and give them some tax relief, and help the businesses out there, so cutting their corporate taxes so they can reinvest. If that would have gotten done, people would be saying it's the most successful presidency in the first 6 months ever. And instead, this president's got no credit for Neil Gorsuch, no credit for personally injecting himself into the removal of a U.S. citizen sitting in the Egyptian prison that he had released, none of the credit for cutting the government regulations and trying to reduce the bureaucracy, because that signature piece of legislation is not done yet. And that has to get done. You have to build the wall. It's a pledge that he has made. And I've been very clear. If anybody makes pledges on the campaign trail and they don't fulfill those pledges, they need to be held accountable. And I think it's very important that we build that wall on the southern border. We get tax reform done. We get infrastructure done. We get immigration done. But you have to get rid of the holdovers. And this administration has been exceptionally slow at keeping those people in the government who don't want to see your agenda move forward. And that is a fault of the previous, hierarchy of the administration. You need to get rid of these people. You need to get your people in.
Well, what about the Chuck Schumer slow walking a lot of the confirmations? We have 135 judicial vacancies. It's a huge number, a huge imprint that Donald Trump can have on the judiciary. They're trickling out nominees. They're having hearings. I mean, there are lots of things they could do. They could say we're doing away with confirmation hearings. We're just going to bring people up for a straight vote on the Senate floor. There's nothing saying you have to have a confirmation hearing for every district court judge, every court of appeals judge. So there's a lot of creative thinking that could go into this.
No, I agree with you, but look, I can't blame the Senate for everything, because there are a number of positions that continue to remain vacant at the government bureaucracy level that need to be filled that don't require Senate confirmation.
State Department,
and
too.
Those are the things that the State Department, pick a government agency, and these are the decision makers who could be helping move the president's agenda, and they're not getting done.
But do they actually have the people? But they actually have the people picked, or no one wants to do the jobs, or what's the problem?
Well, look, I don't know, but there's 4,152 presidential appointments. Some of those are Schedule Cs, some are SES, some are Senate confirmations. But, we're now 6 months into an administration, and I think it has been a mistake from the individuals who were involved earlier, that they weren't well prepared for the transition and didn't have these names ready. Because, look, if you've got to fill 4,000 jobs, you probably interview 12, 13, 14,000 people. And, yes, the Senate is going to slow walk some of these. But those Schedule C appointments, that is at the president's choice, just to simply put them in, those need to be done. And we have heard time and time and time again from people who just don't have the calls returned or weren't ready. And I think that was a lack of leadership at the top.
Oh, they got rid of Christie. They got rid of Christie. I think Christie would have actually done a much better job of getting this stuff done. I mean, I know people don't like Christie for a variety of reasons. I actually like him, but I think he would have done a great job. I'm sorry, but I think he would have planned. Yeah, he would have been like, okay, we have 530 people. We have a list of 720. We got to get 530 out of them. Go, let's get it done. But, coulda, shoulda, woulda. We're looking backward. But it's just crossing on TV that Kirsten Gillibrand, big liberal from New York, is working with the GOP on paid maternity leave, Corey, which I know is Ivanka's issue. She wants some version of that, at least. And she's making the case that that's going to grow the economy. Now, I know everyone's afraid to talk about issues that Ivanka is championing, and I like Ivanka, and I like Jared. I like them both. But is that really kind of going to get the ball moving, the paid maternity leave now? Where are we getting all this money?
Laura, I think the most important thing is, social issues are important to a lot of people, but they're not putting more money in people's pockets. They're not creating jobs. And they are important issues. There's a lot of them that are important issues. But let's get back to the basics. Let's have less government regulation. Let's reduce the burden on small businesses. Let's create an environment so that small businesses can grow. Let's put people back to work. These are the things that people care about. Let's give tax cuts to middle-class Americans so they can decide what to do with it. And all of those other issues will get worked out. And
but can the president say no? Here's my question. Can the president say no to Ivanka if she wants to get this done?
I think the president's been very clear about informing his daughter and son-in-law when there are issues that he disagrees with, that he's going to do what he thinks is right. And I look at the Paris Climate Accord. It was widely reported that Ivanka wanted him to stay in that, and the president, as you know, removed the United States from that. And so, look, the president takes counsel from a lot of people, but at the end of the day, he is always the final decision maker.
He's the decider-in-chief. He's the decider-in-chief, as George W. Bush would say. And he did the transgender ban as well. Corey, we love having you on. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. I'm glad you can be candid and forthright, because you play this very important role, and also get to be in real America. Live free or die. Corey Lewandowski, thank you so much.
Have a great day.
All right, we'll take a break. Don't go away.